I am very pleased to introduce our next speaker, Dr. Paul McNamara. I first met Paul when I was a graduate student at the University of Illinois, and I think he had my wife and I over to his house for a development dinner and discussion that he used to hold with graduate students to talk about development and what that looked like through the lens of faith and through the lens of research and academics and life and praxis, really. And it's been really fun to get to know Paul. And Echo Asia was blessed to receive some funding from one of the projects that Paul's going to talk about called MEAS. You've probably, if you've been on Echo Asia or even echocommunity.org recently, have seen the MEAS logo up there. We've done some work together with the Modernizing Extension and Advisory Services project that Paul's going to share some of his lessons learned today from this 5-year project that has happened. So please help me welcome Paul McNamara.
Great. Thank you, sir. Good morning, and thank you, Abram, for the introduction. It's been really uplifting few days to be here with you all. Really enjoyed the presentation so far this morning, and hopefully we can keep that going. And I just want to acknowledge how much MEAS appreciates our good collaboration with ECHO. We have a number of different efforts that they're working on with MEAS support. MEAS is a USAID-funded project. That's why we've got the Feed the Future up at the top. We're part of the President of the U.S.'s Feed the Future initiative, and we support some of the information technology work that ECHO's been able to work on over the past year, and also some research that Echo Asia's been doing, and it's been a great partnership. So thank you, Abram, for being a part of that. Here's my argument. Small and medium-sized NGOs play a critical role in reaching farmers in a unique role. And this room has a lot of people that work with small and medium-sized NGOs and can do things that other parts of the pluralistic extension system can't do. You're closer to farmers, you have better community capacity, more local knowledge, you have some unique things. But I think you can up your game, you can improve your impact, and I'm going to throw out some ideas. So my argument is the small and medium-sized NGOs, many of you work with them, are critical, but there's things from our experience working with extension organizations around the world that you should consider to try to strengthen your programs. So I'll go through some lessons from the work we've done. I'm also going to give a little big picture view about why extension is just so critical and so important, and why it's back on the global development radar screen in a way that it hasn't been for about 30 years. And why people at the Gates Foundation and at the World Bank and in country governments who are calling me and asking how can we do things better, why they're thinking about it, and why the research investments that have happened over the past 10 years since food prices rocketed in the mid-2000s, those research investments have been important, but are not sufficient to reach smallholder farmers, and extension is so key. I'm going to give a brief introduction to MEAS and the associated projects I direct and work on, and then some lessons for hopefully that fit for this audience. You know, most of the world's poor people are rural people. And many of them are smallholder farmers, or many of them are landless laborers that work on small farms. And so agriculture is a critical way of reducing poverty. In 2010, 900 million poor people, 78% of the poor lived in rural areas, and about 750 million of those worked in agriculture, 63% of the total poor at that time. And another thing that we need to keep in mind is that ag growth is so powerful in reducing poverty. A World Bank study said growth originating from agriculture has been 2 to 4 times more effective at reducing poverty than growth originating from other sectors. So just to make the point that the work that you all are doing is so absolutely critical for poverty reduction. And then another thing about the link between income growth and food security and nutrition, and that indirect pathway of agricultural growth and increased smallholder incomes feeds directly to improved nutrition. A World Bank study showed 60% increase in income per capita leads to reduced stunting and underweight prevalence by 35% and 45% respectively. So that work to help farmers connect to markets, to have greater value added, greater efficiency on their farm, that's even represented by some of the posters around this room. Love the poster from Cosmos from the work they have been doing and the dramatic impacts he reports there. That kind of work feeds directly into improved nutrition and food security for farmers and their families. Here's a chart that shows for sub-Saharan Africa the close link between agricultural productivity and what the previous speaker was talking about is an increase in agricultural productivity, right? She's increased her yield on a per acre or per hectare basis. If this is happening on a wide scale, this research from Africa is showing the close association between that increased productivity and the number of people that are living on more than $1.25 a day, so above a poverty threshold as defined by the World Bank. So as your cereal yield has been going up in sub-Saharan African countries, that's lifting a lot of people out of poverty. So why invest in extension? The Gates Foundation letter this past year said investing in extension so that it helps more farmers in more places, women as well as men, smallholders as well as commercial farmers, is the only way to reap the full benefit of innovation. And the Gates Foundation has been a leader in changing at the policy level the discussion around agriculture in the past 10 years. So it's very nice to see Bill Gates write about the importance of what we're doing. I direct the Modernizing Extension Advisory Services project. We're a USAID-funded effort. We're a knowledge network that works out of land-grant universities in the United States. Illinois is the lead, but we have a lot of partners. University of Florida, Michigan State, University of California, Davis, Cornell, Texas A&M, North Carolina A&T, and then we work with IFPRI, part of the CG system on agricultural policy, SAFE and Sasakawa programs in sub-Saharan Africa. We work very closely with the Agricultural Programs Group at Catholic Relief Services and Winrock International. And we work with many, many NGOs, country governments, universities all around the world. And ECHO is in that group as a very valued partner for our work. We've been active over the past 5 years with a core project called MEAS, and then we have several other associate projects. And the whole idea of MEAS is to work to strengthen extension services, whether that's public sector extension, NGO delivered extension, private sector extension could be delivered through a coffee cooperative or a farmers association, all those types of, or an input dealer network, all different kinds of extension. We study it, we work, we have programs to strengthen those services. And it's all about reducing poverty, increasing agricultural productivity. And we're especially interested in reaching poor farmers and women farmers. A great resource, a lot of resources are on our website, www.meas-extension.org. It's searchable. There's a lot of stuff in there. I'll just put in a plug for what I think is one of the couple most useful resources for NGOs in our experience. In there is a training program that CRS developed called 5 Skills. And it's a book that has a Creative Commons license, so you can modify it, use it, cut it up, use it for your own purposes, but it's a wonderful field-tested and validated training program that covers key process skills for extension field agents. And we see those as the ability to form and organize agricultural groups, farmers groups, so group management, financial management and literacy, and how to work with farmers to develop skills in those areas, agricultural marketing, natural resources management and environment, and also learning, helping farmers go from doing things the way that maybe they've been doing for years and years to having that base, but also being able to think and learn about farming and how to do on-farm research. And it's a wonderful resource. Many NGOs have taken it, adapted it, and used 5 skills for their own training programs. And I would encourage you to go ahead, use it. All the stuff MEAS develops in terms of teaching curriculums and programs is open access available. One other resource that many NGOs have used, I was going from Freetown, Sierra Leone to Bo. I saw a World Vision truck at a market. We stopped to visit with them because I have a lot of friends that work with World Vision. And one of the ladies was saying, "Oh, I've heard about MEAS. We use your gender training materials." And I'm like, I want people to tell us when they use it so I can put it in my report. But I was glad to hear it. But the gender training materials, there's a course on our website that many NGOs use with their field staff to help build their capacity to work with women farmers and men and women farmers in a more equitable way. So the website is a great resource, a lot of materials there. Also, by the way, ECHO has a program where they've taken some of our greatest hits and reworked them in a format that is more appropriate for the ECHO network, and a lot of those are becoming available on the ECHO organization website. And what we do in MEAS is 3 things. We do teaching, and teaching to us is training modules. We have a lot of different training materials available for public use. We conduct training programs. We have a large program right now with the Ministry of Agriculture in Kenya, where we're training thousands of workers. And when we do this, we always try to study and learn from it. And we do other trainings in all kinds of formats. And then we disseminate and write and develop technical notes about capacity development. And then the second pillar of what we do is action-oriented research around extension strengthening. We've done best fit reviews, white papers, lots and lots of case studies around the world, impact evaluations and qualitative evaluations of different extension approaches, including a really nice set of work about lead farmer approaches and farmer volunteer approaches in extension, and then pilot action research, testing out ideas to strengthen extension. One of the things that we've been working on recently is working with a district in northern Ghana, and instead of supporting the NGO program, working with the NGO to support the government program and overcome some of the governance and frankly corruption issues that we see endemic to public sector extension. And that's actually been very effective to use the NGO's ability to manage money cleanly, but support the public sector workers, who many of them we found to be quite good if they have a modest level of support for transport and doing on-farm work. And so that's been a great recent pilot action research, but we have a number of those. And then the third pillar is country-level engagements or major extension organization engagements. One of those was working with the National Federation of Coffee Growers in Colombia. This is a cooperative with 500,000 members, a strategic agricultural organization, and help them do management review and tighten up their extension program, especially creating stronger links between their extension program, which is significant and well-funded, but with research and helping the research extension linkage between much clearer, and also strengthening the links that farmers had into the direction of the extension program, making sure farmers have good voice. So we do that. We work with USAID country missions and country governments, and we've worked all over the world. We've done about 15 country-level assessments that are full-blown, where we send a team into a country and do a review along with local counterparts and help a government come up with a strengthening plan, and a number of those have been pursued and followed up on, which is heartening. We have 3 associated projects. One is called INGENEAES. It's about integrating gender and nutrition into extension. This afternoon I'll have a workshop on exactly this theme. And I know a lot of you are working on ways to reach women farmers or ways to use your work in the field to strengthen nutrition. And we have a program we work, especially in Bangladesh, Zambia, and a couple other countries on this. And then we have had a program in Tajikistan, right along the border with Afghanistan, right in this area around Kurgantube, if you know Tajikistan. So Tajik, but also Pamiri people and some Uzbeks in there, working especially with women farmers in a conservative cultural context, and working through how to do participatory extension in a post-Soviet context where participation is not a widely held approach. And so it's been very innovative, been extremely well received by farmers, and frankly the local politicians have been very supportive of the work. From the village level, mahalla leaders and imams, to local political leaders. Very powerful when you engage groups of women farmers and let them decide what their priorities are to work on in the next growing season, and then support them with some training and technical support. Then we work very closely with the Ministry of Agriculture in the Republic of Georgia. This is a more policy-oriented effort, but Georgia, as opposed to most governments, has tripled their agriculture budget over the past few years as part of a strategy to gain accession to the EU. And they've hired 400 field extension agents, and we have a program where we help train them and provide technical support. Very heartening to see governments put money into agriculture. In Georgia, the rural area is disproportionately poor, a lot of very small farms, and so there's a real social need there for extension services. My background, I'm an extension specialist at University of Illinois. I work in the areas of rural development and consumer issues, especially healthcare, rural health issues in Illinois. My first experience in agriculture was in South Cotabato province in Mindanao in the Philippines, working with a Philippine Council of Evangelical Churches integrated rural development project through the Alliance Churches of the Philippines, Kamakop. And that was working with Blaan people. Anybody here speak Blaan? Okay, anyway. With a wonderful project in a very difficult, I think a lot of you know that part of Mindanao has had a lot of conflict, very challenging environment. That was my introduction to community development and agriculture development when I was a student at Wheaton College in the hunger program at Wheaton. Since then, Margaret and I have lived and worked in Africa, in the Gambia, and I've worked in many, many different countries in research, in community development, and in business around the world. There's a picture of my family. Our kids keep us super busy. We have 6 children, and so Margaret and I are busy with that. And I'm a professor, so I teach a course in agricultural development, and I'm involved in directing our study abroad program in Sierra Leone in West Africa. and then direct these programs and work with the team on research. One of the things that it's important to discuss is what do we mean by extension? I was doing some work in Sierra Leone with the World Bank and the Ministry of Agriculture, and it became clear to me that their working definition of extension was handing out bags of fertilizer. This is extension. Because that's what the extension officers, their primary role, frankly, was in the way their job worked. And so it's important that we discuss what do we mean. What we mean in MEAS is extension is a wide variety of activities and approaches. We like the Ian Christopoulos FAO definition, all systems that facilitate access of farmers, their organizations, and other market actors to knowledge, information, and technologies that facilitate their interaction with partners in research, education, agribusiness, and other relevant institutions. So that facilitation role of extension, that linking role is critical. And also that helps and assists farmers and their organizations to develop their technical, organizational, and management skills and practices, that capacity development role. So it's not simply teaching farmers, it might be helping farmers create organizations and then helping those organizations create capacities. It could be linking farmers' organizations to market opportunity, like helping bring in a coffee business. That's an extension function, that linking, or helping farmers link into a finance opportunity. That could be part of it. So it's a whole set of different things. GFAS has a definition. Extension consists of all the different activities that provide information and services needed and demanded by farmers and other actors in rural settings to assist them in developing their own technical, organizational, and management skills to improve their livelihoods and well-being. So it's these linking functions, and it's much bigger than simply teaching farmers. We see 4 main paradigms in extension. There's kind of a technology transfer. I see this a lot in my USAID programs, where USAID will have, they want you to disseminate a new seed variety, not ask farmers what do the farmers want. They want you to push something. And so that's technology transfer. It can be good, but oftentimes it doesn't start with the farmers defining the problem. Advisory services, think of on-farm consulting, can be, you're trying to help a farmer adopt a new technique. So there's the persuasive aspect, but also it can be participatory, working to respond to farmer needs. Human resource development, think more teaching, even distance education type of programs, education. And then participatory and facilitation extension is going to have farmers have the voice and the control, significant input into program design. And I think a lot of us are very familiar with these approaches and use them in our programs. And we emphasize participatory approaches in extension. Also, it's important to remember extension is embedded in a broader agricultural knowledge system. And you may have formal extension services here, but also importantly, NGOs. And in many cases, these 3 things are very broken, non-existent. And so it may be the NGOs are the only place that farmers can get services. But an important thing out of this is it suggests the kind of linking that extension can do in terms of input supply, producers, organizations, processors, exporters, finance opportunities, media, and other things. So just to point out that extension's embedded in a broader agriculture system. Here are some things we emphasize in our work with extension organizations. At a national level, decentralized extension, often much more responsive to farmers, and lets programs adapt to the highly varied agroecological conditions. Farmer-led, this is the important point about voice, and letting farmers have a governance role in programs. And in many cases, we see governments with farmer steering committees, but it's all simply a tea party. There's no real power that those committees have at the district level. But there are ways to increase that voice and do it without threatening political actors. Market orientation, this is a big challenge for many, many organizations because many of our staff are agronomists, agricultural technicians, and then we find that many experiences where we're successful at increasing productivity, but the farmers actually realize poorer results because the market's not there. For example, you can think of working with lots and lots of women to grow onions. They all come at the same time. If you don't have a way of handling this, all that field work actually hurts the farmers. They may have lower incomes. They may lose a lot of money. And there's lots of, how many of us have seen or been involved in a situation like that before? Anyway, a few of us have been around that. And so how do you build market orientation into our extension programs? How to do it well? Just talking with Jahangir about their work with MCC in Bangladesh, we're working with Catholic Relief Services in Bangladesh about linking women farmers to market opportunities. It takes a lot of work to do this well in a way that the farmers truly benefit from this connection. But this market orientation is a challenge for many of the extension organizations we work with. It's hard, but very important. Tailored, just being able to target well, to reach women farmers, those types of things. Remembering that extension is being done by multiple actors, multiple NGOs, multiple government, and sometimes multiple government agencies, private sector actors, all of these, and that suggests need for coordination, very difficult for us to do. And then innovative, how to mobilize our field workers so that they're being creative and that farmers themselves can be engines of innovation. I love the SRI story and the willingness of that farm to be open to visitors and share their experience, create videos, all these kinds of things. Really powerful when farmers to farmers are doing the teaching and the learning. Some of these same points, especially looking for demand-driven. Many of our project funding cycles are so short that this is impossible to do. We're given a list of things to do in 3 years. When you have 3 years, you can't very well do community processes that let people identify key issues and work on them. Another challenge that's on this list is sustainably financing. And to me, that can be public sector funding, it can be foundation funding, but the idea is here how to have services that don't just happen for 1 year or 2 years and then they're gone. Oftentimes that's not long enough to develop a rural organization that it can stand on its own feet, but how to have them in a way that they can be extended for a while and build capacity to a level that you can take off. And for us, one of the most important things out of agricultural history has been the role of cooperatives and farmer associations. And if you look at US agricultural history, many of the big companies now had their roots, Ocean Spray, Cranberry, it's in Land O'Lakes, dairy, had their roots in farmer cooperatives. And you look in India, some of the most powerful rural development organizations are the milk cooperatives, several of them, very large, powerful organizations that have lifted many people out of poverty. The coffee growers in Colombia has been going for 70 plus years, very good public-private partnership. Those organizations are suggestive of something that built from smaller organizations, associations, making federations that we should be supporting, developing. Gender equity, truly a challenge for many of the organizations we work with, not only because of the cultural context of the communities, but often the organizational structures of the extension organization itself and some of the demands we put on our staff of moving to very remote places and living there. Very hard for many women to be able to take on that role given the family pressures and other things. We need to be much more flexible to do that. And if you want to reach women farmers in some of the contexts we work in, you need to have women staff. It's just in some places we work, it's very hard to work with women farmers with male extension agents. It's just not appropriate. And then ICT is very powerful, a lot going on in that area. I'm going to just very quickly go through this. As you think about what a comprehensive extension program covers, staple crops up on the top left, moving to higher value crops, so vegetables, livestock, up on the top right, helping farmers, building social capital through farm organizations. There, organizing, and then natural resource management from soil fertility to watershed management at a community level, all the ways in between that of conservation ag approaches to help protect the resource base that we're all dependent on. Oftentimes we see extension programs that focus on one. And I understand how hard it is to do one well. But we need to realize if we're just focusing on the one, we may have problems because we haven't addressed natural resource management issues or haven't addressed group capacity in farmer organizations. So it's just good to have a tableau of what are the domains that a comprehensive program might touch on. Okay, there we go. Here's one schematic at a village or district level of an innovative approach to extension that emphasizes farmer-to-farmer learning. You're going to work to help farmers groups reach higher value markets. That's your general approach. And you're starting out with the idea of we need to help these people earn more money. So the first thing you will do is do some participatory rural appraisal in the communities and have them identify who they say are innovative farmers in their own zone. They know who the farm leaders are. So you do that. And then you're going to work to organize groups. And then you do farmer-to-farmer peer assessment and some peer-to-peer learning, training off of the lead farmers. But that's where your innovations are happening, right there, of learning, identifying new techniques, setting up ways to test them. But it can happen at a village level, at a community level, with just a light level of facilitation. Then you're doing some trainings with those interested farmers. And at the same time, you're using the staff to help identify market opportunities. It might be in Dinajpur, it might be finding vegetable marketing agents that you can link to the village that will take the produce to Dhaka. But the NGO can help facilitate that. And by doing that, doing it several cycles, you're going to see innovation happen over time. This does not happen in 6 months. But 3 years, you start to see some powerful change. 5 years, it can be very strong. It can be dramatic in many cases. So that's just one approach. If you're trying to get through your mind, what are we talking about at a village level? That's a scheme. Okay, so what are some takeaways from our experience working around the world with different extension organizations for small and medium-sized NGOs and training centers doing extension? First off, remember what your assets are. You've got unique capacities and skills that some other organizations simply don't have. And one of those that's very important is your relationships, your commitment to a people and a place that comes from just being there over time. That's truly unique and valued. And that's an extremely important asset. Your mission. All of these organizations that you work for have a defined mission. Much of it's about community development or ag development. Very different than some of the missions of some of the organizations that receive huge grants or contracts with the Asian Development Bank or USAID. And your mission is a strength. A lot of the organizations have excellent staff capacity, and that's an extremely valuable asset. We work in places where that doesn't exist, and the amount of work it takes to get that when it's not there is tremendous. So your staff, their ability to know agriculture, know the communities, have the language and social abilities, all those are very valuable. Your previous experience in project management and program implementation, really valuable. All your partnerships and collaborations, that network of relationships, very valuable. Some of the limitations. In some of the smaller NGOs, they become personalized. And the leadership is around one person, and if anything were to happen to that person, it may not be able to function. And so there are some downsides to small, and we need to recognize those. Sometimes there's governance questions and the ability to manage money, those kinds of things that happen to be an issue. So there are some limitations there too, but there's some real assets to build off of. Here's the first lesson we see looking in the different countries we've worked on. Are you a learning organization? Extension is fundamentally about learning, but are you a learning organization? We find many organizations are willing to help other people try to learn, but can they themselves learn? That's hard. That's hard. That means sometimes dealing with difficult information that goes against your priors. Can you act on it? Sometimes it takes real guts to do an evaluation by an independent party and listen to it. It can be risky. I think those of us who run programs know that. It can be hard. We had a tough but positive experience recently with a major NGO that had received Gates Foundation funding. They asked us to do an independent evaluation. After 3 years, it was pretty clear the program was not having any impact despite a lot of money. The NGO, to their credit, took the information and changed the program dramatically and made the program much better and is now realizing some strong impact. But it takes guts in the leadership. It takes strength to actually let somebody look at your program independently and tell you what you think. It takes real guts to listen to your participants and have them tell you what works and what doesn't work. But can you listen? Can you change? This is, in our experience, a critical part of a strong extension organization. Are you really a learning organization? Here's some other parts of that. Do you have in-service training for your staff? Many times we see training that the NGO gets a program grant, so they train, suppose it's about SRI. They do some short training at the beginning of the project around SRI. But they don't have a culture of training. They just spend 2 days learning about SRI, and that's their training for the next 2 years. This doesn't do it. You need to have a culture and a program of training. And we see some very low-cost, effective ways of having peers do training to their peers. they can do in-service training themselves in your staff team, in your field workers. But whether or not the training is happening to us is a critical indicator of how serious you are about learning. Your M&E, whether it's a participatory M&E or from time to time doing rigorous impact evaluations, what is your M&E program and can you listen to it? And then do you have a vision for leadership development and strengthening your organizational capacity? This is one of the critical things for small and medium-sized NGOs. About, are you a learning organization? You're working in the learning domain, but do you learn yourselves? And same goes for professors, by the way. We like to teach, but can we learn? Second thing that we see as critical is targeting. You know, it's like the question when you're 25 years old of where are you going to live? It's a big question, but it determines a lot of things that follow. And for your programs, your targeting is one of your critical decisions. And if you target to work with disempowered women versus commercial farmers, you're going to be in a very, very different space. But you need to own your targeting decision and work with it and make sure you've really thought about it, because this is who you're serving. And we see many of these targeting decisions are not well thought out, and the programming doesn't match up with the targeting they say they want to do. The picture of the Tajik farmers, a lot of the ag planting that we see happening in Tajikistan hardly considers women as farmers, yet they do a lot of the agricultural work, and about 60% of the food in the country comes from those household farms that these women run. But the targeting question is, if you don't even think of these people as farmers, you're never going to design a project to reach them. Just the targeting question is critical. Another one is, how are you using peer-to-peer and volunteers? A lot of effective programs use them well, and you can mobilize them. We've done a number of case studies with ICRAF, the Agroforestry Center, on peer-to-peer and lead farmer approaches. Can be very good. Need to have the supervision and coaching ongoing to help get that impact. Another thing is, how well are you linking, collaborating, partnering? Do you have that ability? Who can you do it with? Can you work with other NGOs? Can you work with government? Can you work with the private sector? But that linking function is critical. Help farmers connect to research, market opportunities, finance, infrastructure. One of the best things the FNC Cooperative in Colombia did was became a voice over time for their farmers to get improved rural roads, improved schools, improved health care. So that's a major linking function to government, very powerful. Your market orientation, how well are you doing in helping your staff build agricultural business capacity? Can they do business plans? Is it a business plan you would put any money into? How do you build that organizational capacity for market relationships? We found this to be extremely hard. Another thing is private sector extension. A lot of NGOs, I don't think, work that well with the private sector. Some do, but many don't. But there's a lot of private sector activity out there. Some of it's very comfortable turf for NGOs, the cooperatives, the associations. But can you work with input dealers, others? Another issue that I think is critical is, what's your stance towards government? And I worked for 2 years in a Ministry of Agriculture, in a Ministry of Finance in Africa, as part of an advisory team to the minister. I'm very familiar with all the challenges of working in a developing country government. That being said, you're making a choice of how you relate to government. In some places, I know you just want to stay under the radar screen as much as you can. But in other places, there's real openings. And there's ways of partnering that can be win-wins for your farmers and strengthening governance and doing some things. Our work in Savalugu, Nanton, and Ghana is suggestive of that. And instead of having the NGO create its own program, task the NGO with strengthening the government's program. And say, serve them. We have terms on which we're comfortable serving them. We can stick to those. But they're willing to work with us on that. It's been very positive. And it can help change the dynamic of getting resources from the government, which frankly are much bigger than any of the resource streams that any grants we're talking about can do. Key issue. Last is ICTs. Are they in your arsenal? Some easy ones are print, audio, radio, video. Those are the easy ones, but you can expand your impact a lot. So to wrap up, we know that there's a lot need for more extension investment. And the small and medium-sized NGOs and the resource centers for farms have an extremely important and valuable role. You can increase your impact through some of the things that we've seen around the world and working on those and building those in your program. You can do a lot if you work on some of those and strengthen your program. Thank you.